mind thing is you have to win.
There you go. There you go. That's what I'm talking about. Hey, Mark, settle down a little bit.
All right, welcome back to another episode of the Just Win podcast. This is your first live post-game reaction. I'm Ted Nguyen. That's Tashan reporting live from New England. The Raiders just beat the Patriots in New England. They went 1-0. We thought we broke the curse of us picking together and having it go the other way. Me and Tashan picked the Raiders to win. They won, and then we found out afterwards, Vic Tafer, RIP Vic Tafer, picked the Patriots to win in his column predicting games. So maybe the curse isn't quite broken, but the Raiders won. That's the important thing. And we have plenty to talk about. Tashan, what do you think watching it live?
Yeah, it looked a little shaky early on, right? I guess on the first drive, it looked great. I mean, they marched down there, had that excellent opening drive, scored a touchdown. They were firing on all cylinders. Geno Smith was clicking. Ashton Genty looked good on a couple runs that he had. And that Trey Tucker touchdown that they had to get off to that 7-0 start. Couldn't have gone much better for him. And then the defense got a stop, got the Patriots right off the field. And then things started to get a little weird for him. Geno threw that interception. The defense was still fine in the first half, but they let the Patriots kind of find the rhythm, and the offense just hit a really bad lull after that. They had 3 straight punts, missed field goal right before halftime, and it looked like one of those games that the Raiders could potentially get away with them with the Patriots getting the ball at start the third quarter. But that's when the Raiders really woke up on both sides of the ball. I think the defense took it to an even higher level, and then you also saw the offense kind of get out of that funk that they fell into and refine that groove that they had on that opening drive. The run game really never came back around, but I mean, Geno Smith carried them on offense in this one. Like I know that you look at, they only had one touchdown, or he only threw one touchdown, but I thought he played an excellent game, completed over 70% of his passes, threw well over 300 yards. And then that second half, put together 3 scoring drives that helped them, take control of this game and pull it out. And so it wasn't, an amazing performance. It wasn't one that, they'll hang their hat on, but it was a good show of resiliency that they could pull out a tough win in, pretty crappy conditions here with the rain and the wind and the chilly conditions on the road against, a solid football team. So a solid start to the season, something they can build off of moving forward for sure.
Yeah, Geno didn't put up monster numbers today, and he did have one bad decision as far as throwing the ball into coverage with Bowers. Bowers was open on that play. He just threw it late, and it ended up getting tipped and intercepted. But other than that, like you mentioned, going on the road, first game within a new system, a bunch of young players out there. I thought he did a good job of staying steady, and I thought he was really accurate today in the rain. He has kind of a Jekyll and Hyde type of record when it comes to playing in a dome and playing outdoors. So I was a little concerned when I saw how rainy it was. Like if it was just a little rainy, then I wouldn't be too worried. But Geno has pretty small hands, and usually when you have small hands, it's kind of tough throwing in the rain. It was was it rainier than it looked like watching it live?
I mean, it was pretty rainy right before the start of the game when I was walking into the press box because I got pretty soaked. But I think it kind of lightened up. It's kind of hard to tell from the press box because it's not open air, obviously, and so it didn't look too bad. It didn't seem that terrible once the game started. Like if it had been raining as hard as it was earlier this morning, then I think the conditions would have been a little bit worse. Like I'm sure the ball was still slick and it wasn't exactly ideal, but it didn't seem to be, a huge issue for them, and there wasn't a ton of wind either.
Yeah, but regardless, still, I thought it was a really good performance from Geno Smith. I thought he was consistent throughout the day, and the thing is, you got to protect Geno Smith. You protect Geno Smith, you can see he has as much arm talent as any quarterback in the league. Like he's not making Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes type of throws off schedule, but like as far as just being in a pocket and being able to deliver the ball into tight windows, I mean, it's as good as it gets when he's protected. And early on the game, on that first drive, they did a really good job on 3rd and 11 of picking up a cover 0 blitz and throwing the ball downfield to Trey Tucker for that touchdown. But after that, they kind of struggled picking up the blitz. I thought Jackson Powers Johnson really struggled against stunts. Like there was 3 times at least where he was beat on an inside stunt, which led to pressure. DJ Glaze kind of struggled with Harold Landry, which is who's a pretty good edge rusher. And one of the big adjustments they made in the second half was it's not like they decided they were going to all play action in on first down, like the commentators talking about. The big adjustment was they were giving a lot of help to DJ Glaze on the right side, especially on those play action concepts, and it gave time for him to get downfield, Jacoby Myers and Brock Bowers.
Yeah, the offensive line was a little bit concerning for me, but I mean, it wasn't surprising because we've talked about that group as one that could potentially have issues, and the run blocking was pretty poor. I mean, they basically didn't run the ball in the first half. I think they only had 7 design runs, and their most successful run was the scramble for 11 yards that Geno Smith had. But Ashton Genty didn't really get much going today. 19 carries for 38 yards and a touchdown. You know, that's 2 yards a carry. So I can't really put too much of that on them. I just don't really think he had many places to go once he got the ball. And so they had to go probably more pass happy than they would like to, especially in a game that was this weird kind of low scoring close game the entire time. It wasn't like they were, playing catch up or it was some high scoring affair and they were trying to keep up with the Patriots offense. And so they definitely want to be more balanced. But the only way that they can do that is if the offensive line is much better than they were today in terms of run blocking. And I thought the pass protection was pretty bad too. Like you mentioned, a lot of those sacks came on blitzes, but I mean, you got to know how to, pick up blitzes, at this level and communicate and work with one another. And Colton Miller, I talked to him a little bit in the locker room after. He said that was something that he felt like when they were one-on-one, and just a hat on a hat, they were fine, but they really struggled with picking up those blitzes or dealing with it when the Patriots are loaded the box against the run. And so there's some things they have to figure out there for sure. I agree with you. I think JPJ had a pretty rough game today. Not just in terms of his play, but he also had that silly penalty, the unnecessary roughness on the sideline. And that's something that last year he had a few of those types of penalties, and you would like to see him rein that in. And so it wasn't just him. I think the offensive line overall had its fair share of issues, and that's something that I think Geno Smith was able to mitigate not having a clean pocket often today and not having a run game today, but that's a pretty unsustainable, model for him to like do throughout an entire season. I mean, I think that's why you saw some of the issues crop up with him last year with the Seahawks. Like they really couldn't protect him. They couldn't run the ball well. And so you had those interception numbers went up. And while he was still a good quarterback last year, like he wasn't necessarily like that breakout Geno Smith that you had seen a couple years prior to that. And so for this offense, 20 points, like I said, is nothing, exceptional. I think Geno played well, but they have higher expectations for the offense for sure. But in order to reach those, the offensive line is going to have to be better, just flat out.
Yeah, and to me, I think a lot of the issues are fixable. I mean, you're on the road and in a loud environment, and it's wet, so I kind of get it. But I think DJ Glaze, I'm concerned with Glaze just because he was the one guy that was getting beat on one-on-one type of blocks. JPJ was getting a lot of movement in the run game, but it's a communication thing and technique thing, picking up those stunts inside. So those are things that you can fix. And, maybe if Glaze doesn't get better, you have to just commit to helping him a lot throughout the season. But I think you can fix some of these issues, but like you said, the running game has to be better. You can't win games like this when you can't even when you want to run the ball, you can't even do it because you're going to get stopped at the line of scrimmage. So running the ball has to be better. I'm curious to see the all 22 to see where the run game issues were. But overall, offensively, I liked what Chip Kelly did as far as making those adjustments, helping DJ Glaze. I like the play action concepts. I like the mix of going under center and shotgun, using tempo and a lot of motions and shifts. So I think overall, pretty nice debut for Chip Kelly. I wish they used Genty in the passing game more, but they really couldn't just because they needed to help out Glaze so much and they were blitzing, so they needed to keep the running back in to protect. But yeah, I thought Chip Kelly called a pretty good game, and they came out of there with a win. Brock Bowers, it was funny because some of the fantasy community were scared that Brock Bowers wasn't gonna get used this season because they weren't using him much in preseason. But he comes out and has 5 catches for 105 yards, and he left the game early because of a knee injury. But man, he just looks uncoverable, man. Like the Patriots were trying to cover him with defensive backs in one-on-one man coverage, and he was just dusting those guys. But yeah, unfortunately, he did leave the game early with a knee injury and wasn't able to come back in. Do you have an update on Brock Bowers?
Yeah, so we don't right now. Pete Carroll after the game said they were checking out his knee and still sort of evaluating the nature of the injury. The way he framed it, it sounded like he could have potentially come back in if they really needed him to, because he said Brock was trying to come back in and training staff was like, hold on, let's see how the rest of this game goes. And so typically that's like, they had the game, it wasn't completely in hand at that point late in the third quarter when he got hurt, but they had been building momentum and there was, a good chance they were going to be able to get it done without him, which obviously they ended up doing. And so they just didn't want to risk it. It seemed like they were kind of being cautious on the cautious side with him. And so at least initially it doesn't seem like they think it is something, serious or to be worried about, but I think they have to continue to monitor it and see the nature of it. But obviously, hopefully, he doesn't have a significant injury or anything of that nature. Because, like you said, I mean, he looked amazing in this one. He had a few catches that were like that one where he was kind of twisting in there, the 30-something yarder on the sideline. His ability to just like pull away from defenders, like his speed and athleticism, like he's arguably the best tight end in the league. And like if he does what he did last year, I don't think it'll be an argument at that point either. So special talent. And also, I mean, I think besides him, like in the past game, Jacoby Myers had a really nice day going against his old team in the Patriots. We talked about, he has a little extra motivation this week, going against his old team in New England for the first time, and also trying to show the Raiders why he believes he should get paid. And I mean, he had 8 catches for 97 yards, on 10 targets. I mean, he showed he could be their number one option, no, not number one option overall, but number one receiver last year after the Devontae Adams trade. He just kind of picked up where he left off in this one. And so, I don't know that a lot of people are joking about they're going to pay him now after this game. I don't know if that happens, but he had a hell of a performance too, in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, pay the man. He's getting open. It's the same thing we saw during training camp. Like when the other receivers are struggling, Jacoby Myers is a guy that just consistently gets open, strong hands, dependable. Yeah, I mean, I get, Besh is supposed to be the replacement, but at the same time, like this just seems like a guy you want on your team long term, in my opinion. But we'll talk about that another time. I thought Trey Tucker looked really good too. I mean, as far as just being a route runner, extremely smooth. He's not wasting time on his breaks. Like everything is efficient. I thought he could have had a couple more catches, but he looked really good. So if he can go out there and be a dependable Z for you, Dante Thornton had a couple catches, and that sluggo towards the end. I mean, he burned Carlton Davis on that route and made a really nice adjustment to a really underthrown ball. That could have been a touchdown if Geno was able to get that ball in front of him, but he had like 3 guys in his face and just chucked it up. But encouraging for the young receivers, and you kind of see where their role is in this offense.
Yeah, I thought the receiver room looked pretty good overall. I mean, even Besh had a nice catch earlier on in the game, like so they spread the ball around pretty well and got everybody involved. And Thornton on that last play, I know that the game was kind of, I guess you could say it was over at that point, like they were up by 10. It was like 5 minutes left, but I think it was good to see the Raiders, if you're a fan of the team, like remain aggressive in that situation. I mean, 3rd and 20, how many times have we seen this team the last couple of years, just like, throw a route in the flat to Amir Abdullah and just kind of give up, And so they stayed aggressive and pushed that one downfield. And while they didn't score on the drive, since they ended up punting, like, that made the Patriots burn a couple more timeouts and drain some more time off the clock. And so it helped them, seal the win. And, especially to do that on the road in adverse conditions in terms of the weather, like I think that sets a mentality. Obviously if that gets picked off and taken back for a touchdown or something, everybody's like, what are you doing? But I think you want this team has to be aggressive to compete this year. Like we've talked about it, like their roster just isn't up there in terms of the upper echelon teams of the league. And so if they're going to be competitive week in and week out, they just have to have that consistently aggressive mentality, not just on offense, but just sort of the team as a whole.
Yeah, I agree. I like having that mindset and not just being too conservative. I thought they handled the end of the game really well. Let's talk about the defense. Again, this was a Josh McDaniels, potential revenge game, but to hold him under 20 points at home. It must feel pretty good for the Raiders. It must feel pretty good for Mark Davis to kind of stifle that offense. And I think a concern coming into this season, especially without Christian Wilkins, was the run defense. But the run defense did a good job. They held them in check the whole game, didn't allow them to be on schedule and that sort of thing. It's hard to see what the defensive tackles are doing without all 22, but I mean, Tyree Wilson was disruptive in this game against the run. He had a really nice stop against a zone read early, I think in the towards the end of the first half as well. He had a sack. And I think schematically, Patrick Graham was doing a really good job of like moving the fronts and confusing the run scheme. And that's what you have to do when you don't have a lot of beef up front, is you have to try to confuse them with speed and just moving guys around. I thought they did a really good job of doing that. And then when they got them into passing situations, they were able to get pressures. I don't think Max Crosby had a sack in this game, but rewatching the game, he was disruptive. I mean, that's just kind of a given, I guess, but they were rushing him a lot on inside, whether they were just lining up inside or putting him on stunts, and he was slipping through. So that was a really good game by Max Crosby, even though it might not show up in a stat sheet, and very encouraging to see Tyree Wilson be that disruptive and Malcolm Kuntz get that strip sack.
Yeah, Crosby actually, they had a sack earlier. It was when he was kind of chasing May on the sideline, and
That's right.
technically he lost a yard, so it kind of does a sack. But yeah, he had one. Jonah Lulu, Malcolm Kuntz, Tyree Wilson. The pass rush was pretty slow early on, but they got going as the game went on, and got after Drake May pretty consistently. And part of that was, the Patriots sort of had to abandon the run game because, they held them 3.3 yards per carry, and so they ended up having May attempt 46 passes. Like, I don't think they intended for Drake May to throw the ball 46 times coming into this game. That probably wasn't their preferred game plan. And so the Raiders got him out of their comfort zone. And, I think the defensive line played really well, like you said, both against the run and the pass. Thought the linebackers looked pretty good too. And that was even with Landon Roberts suffering an elbow injury in the first quarter. It looked pretty serious. Like, he was down for a while and had to be carted off. After the game, Pete Carroll said it was a sprain, but they're still determining exactly how serious it is. So we'll see if he has to miss any time. But even without him, I thought the linebackers played pretty well in the run game. Like, Devin White had 11 tackles. Jermaine Pratt looked pretty good. And, safety play was, they kind of, not exclusively, but they were really living out of that single high look, with Isaiah pulling them out deep and Jeremy Chin operating in the box. Kind of that old school kind of Seahawks alignment that you're used to seeing from back in the day with Pete Carroll. And it was really effective in this one. Like, obviously, it's easier to do that against the Patriots than some of these other teams, better passing offenses that they'll face later on. But it's really well executed game plan by Patrick Graham. And I mean, the defense was just, they were lights out in the second half, or really most of the, after the Patriots had that field goal. I think they didn't score again until that garbage time drive at the end of the game. And so, I mean, the interception by Isaiah Polamau, that was kind of like a shitty throw by Drake May, but you also have to give credit there to Max Crosby as well, like you mentioned, because he got home for that pressure, like right as May was throwing the ball, and that's why the ball was such a duck, and Polamau was able to pick it off. But I mean, they were locking down the Patriots the rest of that second half, and the offense just had to put together a couple of drives to ice the game from there. So really strong performance for the defense. Expectations for them are about as low as it could get coming into the season, but they started the season on a real high note.
Yeah, and one thing I want to note is they did a really good job coming up and tackling too, which was a concern in the preseason. They were missing a lot of tackles, especially in that Seahawks game. But Jeremy Chin was coming up with authority, making solid tackles. Pal Mao was coming up, making solid tackles. So that's a good job by them, because Drake May was trying to, because of the pressure, he was trying to throw quick, and they were doing a good job just limiting the yak on those types of throws, which is huge when you're facing a quarterback who's trying to do that. So yeah, good job by the defense overall. The Raiders are going to play better teams with better receivers, and that's when the corners will get tested. But I thought it was very encouraging. And one more note, even though they were playing a lot of single high, this is definitely not like a typical Seattle Pete Carroll cover 3 sit back type of. This is definitely a Patrick Graham, like the moving fronts, the blitzes, The sim pressures, and sim pressures are when you're rushing 4, but one of the fourth rusher is coming from second or third level. So there's so many moving parts to it. It just wasn't that kind of sit back and static Seattle type of defense. So I like that. They'll definitely be tested more against being this aggressive. You'll be tested more against teams with better receivers. But again, great start by Patrick Graham and this defense. All right, let's get into some questions. Dick Everly asks, what player surprised you and what player disappointed you the most?
Spoke on offense and defense. Say on offense, disappointed. I would have to say JPJ. I think he had a pretty rough game overall, and I know a lot of fans would be like, "See, this is why he needs to play center," but I don't really know if it was a center guard thing or I think he just played pretty poorly today. And I guess I would say in terms of who surprised me the most, like in a positive way, um, I think probably Trey Tucker. I thought he looked pretty good. Like you said, he only had a couple catches, but um, that touchdown, and he had another catch that he had towards the sideline for a first down. He's a guy that like he's had these flashes before, and like he's typically looked pretty good in practice, but it doesn't always translate to the games. I think he showed up pretty well today. Like again, on the box score, it doesn't look like anything crazy, but I think he probably flashed a little bit more than I expected on offense. On the defensive side of the ball, I think I would say Devin White surprised me the most. Like he had a really good game in my opinion, and I was a little bit worried about how that experiment would go. Again, it's only one game, so don't want to put too much into it, but um, so I think he looked pretty good. I don't know if I have like a really big disappointment on defense. I think the defense overall played pretty well. And so I don't know, you might differ, but I don't really have somebody that was like, oh man, they really were underwhelming on defense.
Yeah, it's hard to say without the all 22, and defense played a good game overall, so can't really think of somebody that was too disappointing. I thought Caillou played a good game. That pass interference on him, I thought was BS. They were just both hand fighting at the time and nothing egregious. And he had some tight coverage throughout the game. I agree with you. I think the most disappointing players were JPJ and DJ Glaze. And if you want JPJ to play center when you have to handle even more mental processing, I don't think that's a solution to the problem. He just needs to kind of get that communication and technique down, and that just takes time and more reps. So I think this is the O line you want moving forward. They just need more reps together. So yeah, I wouldn't move anything with the offensive line. I just hope this group is able to stay together and kind of build some chemistry. All right, next question, Jonathan Espino. I can't read that. Espinoza.
Espinoza.
Any concerns for the run game?
Yeah, I think I was already concerned about the run game, but I think it just sort of verified my concerns about the run game. Like, and again, I think Genty is a great talent and has a lot of potential, but this was kind of part of the thing that you were wrestling with when you were debating, should they draft him or maybe an offensive lineman at number 6? Because it's like, you can put a good running back to waste if you don't have the quality offensive line in front of them to bring them in the run game. And the Raiders pretty much ran it back at the offensive line. Like they obviously they moved guys around, JPJ playing guard and Meredith playing center, but still the same group pretty much. And that was a big bet on the coaching staff and their ability to develop these guys. And I don't want to put too much in the one game, but this game pretty much similar to like a lot of games that we saw last year. And so that doesn't mean that obviously this next offseason they can invest in the offensive line and spend some money and some draft capital and have that and Genty. So I'm not saying like they're going to regret drafting Genty if the run game isn't good this year, but I think this could be something that's like more the norm than not. If the offensive line isn't able to step it up, and they're really, like I said, we're really betting on guys, developing and getting better, like a Glaze, like a JPJ. Sort of these young guys ascending, and so we'll see. It can still happen. It's only one game, first game of the season, but definitely was a shaky start.
Yeah, I mean, there were definitely times where they were getting a lot of movement. There were flashes of a strong potential run game there. I thought JPJ consistently got good movement in the run game, but it's about playing together and just kind of playing that scheme fast. And I just felt like they were just they looked tentative when they were run blocking. So that's something that they have to get better at. And I think Ashton Genty really maximized some runs down by the goal line. I thought he was stopped in the backfield and was able to push his way into the end zone. So we haven't seen Ashton Genty get unleashed yet. We saw a little flashes of it, but again, it's hard for any running back, no matter how good he is, to overcome bad run blocking. We saw that with Saquon Barkley with the Giants, and now he's with the Eagles, and he's flying high. So it's tough, and it's something they definitely have to get better at. And because you just can't live this way as far as just being this pass heavy and just having no run games. So they have to get better in that front. All right. Well, that's for the people that haven't listened yet, why don't you give them an update on Bowers and Atlanta Roberts? Seems like some people are asking about that in the question. In the questions.
Yeah, I mean, they can go back and watch it when we put it out, but yeah, they're still determining the severity of both of those, so we'll see. Basically, moving forward, probably have some more information tomorrow when Pete Carroll talks. Maybe that is one more from Frank. Did you notice, I guess, in the second half, from your vantage point watching on TV, like, dramatic defensive adjustments in the second half? Like, I felt like it was pretty similar to what they were doing in the first half.
I think the one thing I did see was they started playing Max Crosby inside a little bit more, whether they were stunning him inside or just straight up having him rush from the inside, and maybe they were playing a little bit more man coverage, just because May was getting a little comfortable throwing underneath over and over again. So, but it's really tough to see from the TV angle exactly what the coverages were. But we'll talk more about that in our week's pod on Wednesday, I believe we'll have it. But that's pretty much all we have for you guys today. Sean's got to get out of New England, and yeah, great win so far, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
All right, y'all. Peace.